Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Parks. I'm one of the co-founders of the Location Independent Therapist community or the LIT community. And I'm really excited for this video today because I'm here with my co-founder, Sonia Jaeger, and we're celebrating a very special occasion. Sonia is a few weeks away now from celebrating her 10th digital nomad anniversary. And we're going to pick her brain today about all the cool things that she's been up to over this past decade. 10 years as a digital nomad.
Yeah, well, actually, with your introduction, I was thinking we could start with that. Oh no, we're not celebrating today, right? Because I'm German. We can't celebrate in advance. This is a conversation we recently had about cultural differences in how you're celebrating in
Yes.
advance or not. But yes, we are here because it will be my 10th digital nomad anniversary on October 6th. And yeah, 6 years, 10 years ago, 10 years ago is when it's all started. But I mean, it is kind of a date. You have to pick a date, right? So yes,
Yeah.
I am celebrating 10 years now. And then it's an interesting question of when and how did it start? But yeah. Yay. 10
Yeah.
years.
Well, we're recording it in advance. Like, and so, yeah, today is not like, we're not actually celebrating. We're just getting excited, like
Thank
getting
you.
the
Thank you.
energy up, getting you motivated do you know what you're going to do or where in the world you'll be celebrating?
So I know what I'm going to do is not work and eat a lot, eat a lot of good food. I actually don't know yet where I'm going to be. I had planned to be in Australia, where I'm right now. But things changed recently. And that means that in October, I'll be somewhere else in the world, probably somewhere in Asia. And hopefully, I will know soon. Most of the time, I do know a few months, up to 6 months in advance in general. And I have a vague idea of where I'll be, especially because I also need to know at what times I can work, right? And what time zone I will be in. But yeah, actually, I don't know yet where I will be on October 6th, but I'm pretty sure I will be celebrating with very good food.
Nice. Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of good options in that part of the world to choose from.
Yes.
And that's interesting what you're saying too about like that you have to plan things in advance. I mean, is that something that you figured out pretty early on in this journey, or is that something that's you've kind of shifted more into that like planning for your travels farther in advance?
It's actually been more like that since we launched our lit community for colleagues because we tend to plan
Mm,
our events more in advance. And if I'm hosting an
yeah,
event, I want it to be during daytime, my daytime, wherever I am.
yeah,
For my clients, for my online counseling, I tend to open my calendar for the next 2 or 3 months. And so that's a bit easier to know. And I actually knew that there was a possibility that things would change for the next few months. So I did open my calendar with restricted hours where I knew even if I go to a different time zone, I would still be okay to work those hours. And then once I know definitively, I will add some more time slots. Because yeah, I don't do calls before 10 a.m. and I don't do calls
yeah,
after 11 p.m. If I can avoid it.
yeah.
And yes, no, it's definitely a big thing. Um, but it's interesting to try to see how much I want to plan in advance and whether it's more for work reasons or for private life reasons. And the more you try to, the more you travel, the more you want to travel is one thing. But
Mhm.
also, the longer you've been traveling, I find the more I want to attend events and catch up with people. And so it also
Yeah.
depends on a lot of things of where people are and what's happening in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yes.
Let's pause before because I have a lot of questions and I have more questions about things you just said. What was going on 10 years ago? How did this all start?
Yeah. So 10 years ago, I was finishing my PhD and I decided to take a 10 months break with the idea of opening a private practice in Germany afterwards. And I decided later on that that day when I left for my 10 months break is the start of my journey because it kind of was, but I didn't know at the time. At the time, I had planned to travel for just under a year. Then I had to go back to Germany to defend my PhD thesis. And then, yeah, I had other plans. But then I really, enjoyed traveling. And so so yes, so that's how it started as a just sabbatical, basically.
Okay, okay. Yeah, but not with the plan of it turning into like a 10 year
No, I
at
was
least
still
adventure.
working. I was still being a bit no digital nomad at the time because as part of that PhD, we were still working on some, research papers that we wanted to publish.
Okay.
So I was taking time off, but I was also I remember sitting in a cafe in Chicago and
Yeah.
writing, reviewing the paper that my colleague had written. And it was a really interesting feeling of that being in a completely different world, but also doing the same kind of work that you were doing back home. So, and I did really enjoy that.
Yeah.
I did enjoy that work part, the research part. At some point, I felt like I'm ready to let that go.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that too. Um, and so that was more like the travel piece with like a little bit of work and research mixed in. When did the online therapy piece come into play?
It's about 6 months into my 10 months of traveling, I started being a bit bored, to be honest. Like
Okay.
traveling all the time was fun, and I was traveling with friends and then traveling alone and exploring new countries, and that was really great. But there's only so many waterfalls and temples you can see until you feel like they all kind of blend into each other. Um, and I was really missing that more cognitive kind of challenge and that other type of
Yeah.
work. And so I knew I definitely wouldn't just want to be traveling, as the main thing in my life. But I did really enjoy the traveling and exploring part and the meeting new people. And um, then I met someone who asked me why don't you work online? You know, I do that.
Okay.
You could do too.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? As a psychologist? I don't think so. They're like, yeah, yeah. She was having video calls with her therapist, and
Okay.
had no idea that was possible. 2014, that was not 2015,
Yeah.
that was not really a thing, at least definitely not in Germany and not in many other
Yeah.
countries either. But then I started looking into it. And from there, I was like, well, actually, this is a thing and this could be a thing. And
Okay.
so after going back to Germany to defend my thesis, I only stayed for 3 weeks. And then I went back to Thailand, where I was mostly at the time, doing a lot of diving and yoga and enjoying the food.
Um,
Um, and I decided to stay there for give it 6 months or so to see if it could be something. And yeah, 6 months later, I knew it could be something. So I just
okay.
kept. But yeah,
So
it
by
came
the
very
end of
slowly
like
like that. Yeah.
it would have been like end of 2015 or something there, or early 2016 that you started to like get clear about the idea about okay, I'm gonna be an online do online counseling and I'm gonna travel with it.
Yeah, I think, yes. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that would be the timeline. Yeah, I think early
Not to confuse you.
16, no, but I think late 15 is when I launched my website. And
Okay.
then it kind of went on from there. Yeah.
Okay. And then it would have been about a year later, I guess, that you and I met online
Mhm.
in a digital nomad Facebook group. And um, yeah, I was I didn't think anybody was doing this, right? Because it was so uncommon for people to be providing online counseling at that time. Um, did you continue like you said that you knew it was a good thing. Did you like come run into any kind of obstacles with like your colleagues or anything like that, or people that you told that what you were doing? Yeah.
Every professional. So back then, there weren't that many professional trainings you could attend online, which has obviously changed now.
Yeah.
And I do like doing stuff on offline in person as well. So I would usually go back and attend professional trainings in person.
Yeah.
And when that intro round, when you have to introduce yourself and what you do to your colleagues, that was always a fun one. Um, but it
Yeah.
was really interesting depending on who you talk to, because some countries were much more doing the online counseling thing already, even back
Okay.
then. And there was research showing that it
Mhm.
is, effective and works
Mhm.
and all of that. So it really depended on who you talk to. And I did pretty quickly find some colleagues who were like, yeah, of course we're doing this. And we've been doing it for a long time, because with some people you can't work otherwise. Why not?
Yeah.
Meeting colleagues who did it even before the internet, who did it via phone call, or who did, other types
Yeah.
of help. So it really depends on who you talk to. But yes, colleagues, but even friends and family took a long time to understand how this. Why would anyone want to do this? Um,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah. And can it
Yeah.
work? Can it be the same? Can you have a conversation? Can you have a relationship like this? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, it's I'm sure so many people listening to this, like if they're newer to the field, like they're like, but online therapy is so common now, right? It really was so different like ten or so years ago.
And I mean, even we met in a Facebook group, but that Facebook group we had
Yeah,
to create first, right?
exactly.
Um, when I started, I met the first colleagues doing something similar. I met them in forums online. That was like
Yeah.
like, what, oh, we're also doing this. Like, how do you even meet people? Like, the
Yeah,
world was very different back then.
it
But it was
was.
also easier to reach out to people because there were fewer people doing it some way.
True too. Yeah. Yeah. I guess that now, like a positive thing is there's maybe sometimes it's harder that there are more professionals doing it, but there's more people who are interested in it too, more
Or,
potential
I mean,
clients.
overall, it's amazing. And we need so many
Yeah.
more. For sure.
Yeah.
And I love seeing every new colleague who comes around and is like doing this. I'm like, yes, 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 come on, specialize in something that I'm not doing ideally, or, even something similar. And I can
Yes.
send you those that I can't take on for whatever
Yeah.
reason, or just because I don't have any capacities. And yeah, no, there's so many. We need so many more.
We already talked a little bit about it, but like how has your travel and like digital nomad lifestyle changed over these 10 years? You said you kind of plan a bit more in advance now, but what else?
Yeah, it has changed a lot over the years. Just well, when I started, I was traveling alone, and then I met someone while traveling.
Yeah.
So and we do keep traveling together, but sometimes alone as well. So
Hmm.
there's definitely that like relationship travel style. You had a child in the meantime. Um, you know, I don't. Life's a bit easier without children when you're trying to travel.
Definitely. Although people do it. I always tell people that too, right? Like now, especially now
Oh
online,
yeah,
you can see so many things.
definitely. Um,
Yeah, there's
Working
so
from
many
home is
ways
a
that you
challenge as
can
well,
travel.
right?
Less exciting, right? Less gourmet food and tropical beaches and things, but yeah, never a boring day working from home.
Uh, I believe you have pretty good food over there as well. But yes, um,
That's true.
when I first started, I still had a home base in Germany, and I kept that for the first 2 or 3 years. I kept a small room basically,
Yeah.
and would go back a few months a year, and then until I realized I wasn't back enough. It just wasn't worth it, and I prefer to go other places.
Okay.
Partly due to the fact that my family is all over the place as well. So if I go
Mhm.
back, whatever that really means, I want to go visit friends and family, and they're not necessarily in the city I lived in last in Germany. So,
Okay.
um, and then for a while, I didn't have a home base at all, and I was just traveling. And I do have a few things in storage, but not many. Um, and
Mm.
and then I started having things in different parts of the world. um, I now have 4 bicycles in 4 different cities,
Oh my
and
goodness.
in places. Well, one of them is just because I need to pick it up somewhere, and still there,
Okay.
and I don't let go of that one because I really like that bike. But the other
Yeah.
three I actually use whenever
I love that.
I'm in those places. So I did pick up home bases basically over the
Hmm.
years again, just places that I keep going back to, or that there's a family or other reason to be there, and
Yeah.
um, and then yes, I do tend to travel quite light with my luggage, so I try to have some
Mhm.
like winter clothes. I have like, yeah, bicycles and coats and winter stuff in a couple of places around the world. It's three
Yeah.
places around the world, just because they are very bulky and not needed most of the time. And
Yeah.
then the speed of my travel has changed as well. Like I will sometimes travel faster. I will sometimes, stays longer in a place. Um, so yeah, it keeps changing, and I'm sure it will keep changing.
Yeah. Well, I've known you now for 7 years, I think it's been, and I feel like I live vicariously through you, especially in recent years when my life has become a little more location dependent and I'm doing less traveling. When we met, I was traveling a lot more with my business. So now I just, I love just keeping track of like where you're going to. Like the other day when you were kayaking and the with the dolphins over there in Australia, I was like, oh, it's so
Yes. My
cool.
home place in Australia has dolphins right next door. It's really amazing.
Well, and but something I always wonder about that I think would be really hard for me is how do you find the balance especially in a new place, how do you find the balance between doing some work, like, doing some work, working, running your business, and sightseeing and exploring and like you're saying, meeting with people.
Yeah, I think I have different life modes almost. Um,
Uh-huh.
there is the more travel lifestyle, if
Yeah,
especially to new places where I
yeah.
usually don't know people or don't know the place. So I will want to. I have in some ways you have more time because when you're in a new place, you don't
Mhm.
have those routines that you have at home. So you don't need to do your, I don't know, dentist appointment or your hopefully or all those kind of routine catching up with friends or whatever hobbies you might have. So in some way you have more time when you're traveling, but on the other hand, you do want
Yeah,
to explore more. So I will try to work less during those times and prepare more things in advance, and then just do the things that need to be done,
yeah.
on a weekly basis. Um, and then it depends on how long you stay there. And then
Hmm.
there's traveling to places you already know, but that are
Yeah,
still more the travel lifestyle. And then there's more the home
yeah.
base lifestyle, like back here in Australia, even if the house might change because I always come back to the same neighborhood. I have very much a routine kind of, I know which cafe I'm going to, I know where I'm kayaking, I know where, which yoga class I'm going to. So that is a very different work-life balance compared to the more travel lifestyle.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm sure that's also something that you've figured out as time has gone on.
And time zones obviously influence my work hours a bit,
Hmm.
because a lot of my clients at the moment, and it changes, but at the moment, a lot of my clients are in Europe and Africa.
Yeah,
And so when I'm here, I tend to have more afternoon and evening work hours for my client calls.
yeah.
And so I can go kayaking in the morning if I want to,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
which I actually really like, especially now that it's winter still here in Australia and the days aren't
Yeah.
that long. But then I just spent 6 weeks in Europe and I traveled a lot, catching up with friends and meeting them in different parts of Europe. And so yeah, very different styles of traveling and working. And but the other part is just actually taking holidays. Sometimes when you go to a new
Yes.
place, it's great to
Yeah.
take some days off to really just explore. Um, but I have learned that the first days when I travel to a new place, I actually like working a little bit, not too much, but a little bit, because my
Mm-hmm.
work does give me a lot of routine and stability as well. And that can be really
Yeah.
useful when adjusting to a new place. So yeah, it's a fun thing to experiment with for sure.
That makes a lot of sense. And I also know you're like really skilled at like figuring out where your office is going to be and setting up a really good office place, often very creative office space too.
Well, I just love sitting on the floor. So that's what I'm doing right now. At least for my
That's
client calls,
amazing.
that's what I always do.
Yeah.
And that's easy to find anywhere. And then for, you know, laptop work, admin,
Yeah.
emails, marketing, I will find a desk, but I will often go to a cafe, which you can combine with exploring a new neighborhood. Like this
Mm-hmm.
afternoon, I'm going to meet a friend here in Adelaide who moved to a new neighborhood that I don't really know that well. And so I'm going to go
Okay.
early, sit an hour or two in a cafe and get some work done, and then catch up with the friend and explore the neighborhood a bit. And that's something I will
That's
try to
fun.
do while traveling as well.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, and so, I know both of us have said, like, I know something I often say at least is like, even though we co-founded the lit community, like I would be a member if I wasn't the co-founder because
Yeah.
it's so, I just think all the time, like how much I wish that I would have had it, like before I met you, even like, those early days, like what can you imagine might have been different, like if you had had the lit community back then?
I think I would have known that it's possible to do the work we do and
Mm,
not have as many doubts.
Yeah.
I think I would have probably avoided a few detours I took,
Yeah.
because I followed some marketing experts at the time where, in hindsight, maybe that wasn't exactly right for me and my type of
Yeah.
business. I think a lot of the content that's out there is not geared towards therapists, obviously. And
Mhm.
we do have a very different type of business in many ways. And a lot of the
Makes
things that
sense.
people do for marketing or setting up their business might not work for us. So having more, um, yeah, targeted content to my niche and to
Yeah.
what I'm doing would definitely have been helpful. But the main thing is really the loneliness, especially when you travel a lot.
Mhm.
This life can be and this work can be quite lonely, and you need to, I mean, we all need supervision anyway. We need to learn new skills. We need to develop
Yeah.
professionally. And for all of that, it's been really helpful to have colleagues. And I love having colleagues from different parts of the world because my clients live in different parts of the world as well. And
Yeah.
I, speak and work in three languages every day. So having colleagues who also are familiar with that, or who can help me and tell me, like, that client is dating someone from your country. Like, tell me, is he just weird, or is that like a cultural thing? Like,
Yeah.
tell me a bit more
Yeah.
about that culture because I don't know that culture and I don't know that country. I've
Yeah.
never been there, and so that's been really amazing for my work as well.
Yeah, I think it's such a unique thing because psychology tends to be so focused on, this is how we do in this country where I'm from and where I got trained in. And
Within my
why?
specialty, right, and within my
As in
type
your
of
specialty.
therapy. Like,
Mhm.
how many times do you actually have people from different types of therapy really talking
Yeah,
to each other and helping each other? It's not that common.
yeah, yeah. I think it's so unique. And I feel like we're all like a little bit out of the box thinkers. And for me, being a bit of an out of the box thinker and doing online therapy and stuff, that gave me a lot of imposter syndrome from the start. So I think, like you were saying, like, that just knowing, being around people who are also doing this and knowing it could be possible is, yeah, is a huge asset.
And I like the mix of people we have, of those who travel, those who are more location dependent, but do work with
Yeah,
international clients. And
yeah,
I mean, your journey has changed a lot over the years as well. And we
yeah,
did meet in person while traveling. The one
exactly.
time
Yeah.
we met was in none of
Once.
our countries. We met in Colombia
Yeah.
for a
Yep.
conference. And I used that to stay for 6 months in South America at the time and to explore
That's
other
cool.
countries around it. Because if there is a reason to go somewhere, then it's great to be able to stay for longer, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the other part of this traveling thing is when you have family and friends in different parts of the world, working remotely is amazing because you can visit them for longer or you can meet
Yeah.
them somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
I have friends who will, let's meet somewhere for a month and we each have our own place,
Mhm.
but we do catch up and we have those everyday interactions, and that's amazing.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, what about if you could go back in time? I love that question. I know we talked about the me asking you this question too, so I'm curious to hear your response. If you could go back in time, any words of advice to your younger self, or words of advice to the people listening?
Just go for it. Just try it out, and
Hmm.
and maybe figure out your own way of doing it. There are a lot
Yeah,
of digital nomad experts out there trying to sell you some
yeah.
kind of weird dream. Um, I've met many of them. Most of them are not living the dream themselves.
It's so
If a
true.
digital nomad, it's simple rule. If a digital nomad is only living in a very cheap country, because it's so amazing in Bali or in Chiang Mai, and because all the digital nomads are there, then probably they aren't making the type of money they're saying they're making, and they're not really
Yeah,
living the lifestyle they're selling. Because are you nomadic if you stay in one place the whole time? I don't know.
true. Yeah,
My I definitely want to travel to more expensive countries as well and be able to
yeah.
visit family and friends and,
Mhm.
attend a wedding somewhere if a friend is getting married. And that
Yeah,
requires a flight halfway across the world. And those are really
yeah.
expensive, especially now. So, but yeah, find out your own way. You travel slowly, fast, and don't
Mhm.
like, it's fine to adjust and to change. We all change, and it's fine if our travels change as well.
I feel like that's the kind of thing we also tell people in the lit community a lot, right? Like just get like prepared enough to launch your website, start seeing clients, and like always give yourself room to pivot and experiment with things too.
Yeah. And make sure you do have enough emergency money available so that you can at any
Very
time just
important.
go to the airport and fly wherever you need to fly to, like some of those
Yeah.
basics. And make sure you also plan for the future. I meet way too many digital nomads who love living the life they're living, but they're stuck staying in hostels and not planning for the future
Mm,
because they're just making enough to get by.
yeah.
And if you spend 16 hours a day in a hostel room on your laptop, that might be fine for the beginning of your journey, but that's
Hmm.
probably not how you want to be in 20 years. So
Yeah.
if you're serious about just doing this long term, you need to plan for your retirement. You need to plan for
Yes.
emergencies. You need to, get your health insurance and your checkups and like all of these basic life things that a lot
Yeah.
of digital nomads tend to forget or to ignore.
Hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
one of the things with traveling a lot is that it's very easy to push aside all of those things because traveling is so exciting. There's always something new happening and
Hmm.
it just keeps you going. But at
Yeah.
some point, you will have to face those things. So, and we all have,
Yeah.
most of us have parents who are getting older and who will require more,
Yeah.
attention at some point and all these things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think it is a trap of like, because I see it in like expats too, who even if they're going to be somewhere for a long time, they get in that mindset of like, oh, this is kind of like a dream life. And it's still life, right? Wherever you live.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
then
And I
I'm
mean,
going to
that's what
ask
we
you
see
one
with
more
our clients,
question.
right?
Oh, yes.
It is life,
Yeah.
and the issues are the same pretty much no matter where you are.
I
Yeah.
have one last question I'm going to ask you that I just thought of. What about 5 to 10 years from now? You're talking about planning for the future. Anything you're really hoping for your business and travel life?
Um, I just want to be able to keep doing it.
Yeah.
I really like it. I enjoy having a mix of home-based life and travel life and experimenting with that balance.
Yeah.
I like to not keep it the same all the time, so I hope to keep doing that. Um, but yeah, no specific plans. I think I'll just keep going, and we'll see. And hopefully, you need to be fairly healthy and be able to afford things. So hopefully those things, flights have so expensive in the last few years. So hopefully that won't keep going because I would be
Yeah.
enjoy being able to still afford them. But
Yeah.
yes,
Oh, great. Well,
keep going.
we'll be doing another recording like this in 5 years, maybe sooner. But just and you can listen on what else you've been up to since then.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where we'll be in 10 years. Maybe we will celebrate in person in 10 years for my 20th
I,
Nomad anniversary.
oh, yes. That's what I was gonna say. That's one of my hopes. We have to meet again.
Yes.
Sooner
Well,
sooner than 10 years.
yes, we're going to celebrate one of our lit anniversaries in person. Definitely.
Definitely.
Within the next 10
Yes.
years. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Sonia. This is awesome. And now I want to
Thank
go hop on a
you.
plane and go travel myself. So
Let's all travel more.
thanks so
Also,
much.
we're ruining the environment, I know, but
That's another thing too. Yeah.
I don't have
Maybe
children
so yeah, maybe balance it out. Maybe a conversation to dive into for
for
another
another
video
time.
about
Hmm.
yeah.
A very
All right.
interesting
Thanks,
one, how
Sonia.
to be sustainable as a digital nomad and how to not ruin, how to lower your, yeah,
Yeah.
digital footprint. It is really an interesting conversation that's definitely happening. And
Yeah.
yes.
And it's one I know, yeah, that you have a lot that you could share, a lot of wisdom to share about it.
But anyway, thank you
Thanks.
and see you.
Yeah. And enjoy the celebration on the actual day too.
Thank you.
In
And if
person.
anyone watching this later, this weird rambling about 10 years as a digital nomad, feel free to ask questions in the comments. Looking forward to hearing your experiences and your
Perfect.
questions.